huge realisation of death. Like what the guy that was in the car with me, a good mate, or a guy that I've been working with, he was a good friend of mine. Yeah, he passed away, and I could have. I literally just went to bed. I went to sleep, and then bam, this all happened, and it was like, wow. I realised, like, you know, how precious life is and all that, and grateful for just being alive, grateful to be able to see my friends again and my family. And I think, like, it might be hard to do it without a near-death experience, but I think talking about death can still help to create that realisation of how blessed it is to be alive, or grateful for just being alive and having a life. Yeah.
I find that there's a hurdle, is that in order for the priorities to shift, and in order for it to have an impact, a person has to come into what I would call an unwelcome discovery. They have to. Most people are getting by, I think, on the assumption that life is ongoing. You know, that just like every day of my life, the sun rose, I woke up. You know, it's proof that life is ongoing, right? And this idea of death seems like a theory.
Yeah.
And one has to come to the unwelcome realization that it really is going to happen. It really is, and I don't want to know that. But once you cross that hurdle and you go, yep, it's going to happen, that's when the priorities, for me at least, start to shift around, and the meaning, the value in it is starting to emerge. And but unwelcome realizations, people don't tend to go looking for that. You know? I'm going to think about what makes me most uncomfortable. They'll be forced to think about it. Life circumstances, loss of a loved one forces them to deal with it. But then they leave the funeral as though they've left it behind. You know, that death is a funeral thing. It happens at a funeral, at a cemetery, and then we go out to lunch and it's all over.
Yeah, I'm trying to get those a bit more, those ones. I reckon it's good for people to go to funerals as well, to help to learn about celebrating someone's life, and then having the opportunity to then do it. Because a lot of the time when I've been to funerals in the past, I've always sort of gone, I wish I talked more to them, I wish I got to see them, and I think by going to those sort of things, it can help you to actually make that happen, rather than just I guess if you don't ever go to a funeral and experience that shock of someone then being gone, you're not thinking about that they're not going to be around forever. Yeah, because I think I've experienced that with when I went away to live over in Africa. I had to say goodbye to friends in Perth, but when you're in Perth, you just sort of take it for granted, because you know, they're half an hour away. I can just get in my car and go and see them.
Permanently there.
Yeah.
Always there.
So that's another experience that funerals and things do. It makes you realise, wow, my friends, I need to value them and make sure I put time into them. Yeah. Well.
There's a book called Tuesdays with Murray. Have you heard of that one?
No.
Follows this professor who's diagnosed with terminal, some kind of motor neuron disease. And it's just a series of conversations he has with an ex-student. And they go into all the different areas of life. But at one point, this guy, Maury Schwartz, who's the guy terminally diagnosed, he attends, a friend of his dies, and he attends the funeral. And he's crying, and someone asked him why he's so upset, and he said, all these people had so many nice things to say at the funeral, and they never said it to him. You know? They never said it to him while he was alive.
Yeah.
So he's like, he went a bit all out, and maybe, you know, not everybody would do this, but he had his own funeral. Like, he knew he was terminally ill, he's going to pass, let's have the funeral. So he invited everybody as though they were coming to his own funeral, you know. And people stood up and they said what they would say. if he'd already passed, and he got to hear how people really feel, you know. And that's, you know, that's kind of like a Hollywood example for me. It's like a cartoon thing. Not everybody's going to do that. But it did make me think, people do wait, you know, people do hold off on saying how they really feel about another person.
Yeah.
And then, as though it might ruin things if they say it now. But then, you know, the person never hears.
Yeah, I think the journey with me learning more about death and that realisation actually started. So this was 2013, end of 2013, started 2014 that I went and volunteered in Southern Africa, and the idea was to go for a year.
Yep.
And before I went, I had lots of preparation and training and paperwork and all that to do. And there was a couple of things that they asked me to do, and one was to settle or settle any issues with with people.
Wow.
And also to go and tell people what you thought of them.
Wow.
Because there was two reasons. One was because they really wanted everyone that goes and volunteers to be 100% focused on being there,
Yeah.
so not having issues to deal with back home. And then the other one was because it's less safe in Africa.
It's dangerous.
Dangerous from the point of view of like with the dangerous people, but also just like lack of safety. So there is a good chance, there is more of a chance of death. And so they said it's important to do that because it could be the last opportunity to.
Leave no
regrets. And I also had to do I had to organise my funeral.
You mean like a will and...
Do my will and then sit with my family and discuss what I would like for my funeral. So that was all in place, so that if anything happened, it's all done, so my family doesn't have to worry. And that whole process was huge for me. Seriously, like even sitting down with my family, my mum, she told me to stop. Like she couldn't handle it. But my dad, he sat there and he listened and he said, you know, we have to talk about this. And you know, I mean, I didn't say too much. I was sort of like saying I want people to wear bright clothes, and I want to have nice music, and I want people to celebrate it. And I don't want it to be a drab thing. And I want it to be buried, like not cremated. My reason at the time was thinking that I want to be, so that people have a place that they can go to sort of feel like I'm actually there, even though I'm not. But yeah, that was an amazing experience. I do not regret that. Like as tough as it was to have to talk about that, yeah, it was beautiful.
And you nearly died too.
And then I nearly did.
Yeah.
That's what as well. What shocked me, I was like, wow, they weren't joking.
Yeah.
And you was down for like what, a year?
I was meant to be there for a year with the.
I mean, you had brain damage for a year, right?
Well, I had very extensive rehab for 6 months and then continuing for the next like 2 or 3 years, and I still have not finally. I haven't like sort of seen the end of it. Still ongoing process for me.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, in what ways?
Like, I have to continue to.
Do you find yourself struggling in some
Is
tasks?
this because of the car accident?
Yeah, the brain injury affected a lot of things.
Couldn't
Yeah.
walk,
Like-
couldn't write.
Yeah, so it was like I had
That's right.
internal.
Zhen told me about this.
Yeah, internal capsule damage, and then microscopic shears throughout the brain due to the nature of the crash, and then some damage on the rear and the side, and a little bit on the front as well. And so I had a lot of similar symptoms to a stroke because of the internal capsule damage. So my right side was not functioning properly. I couldn't feel or move it very well, and it affected memory and my ability to like executive functioning, to be able to think and organise and problem solve, and it affected my emotions a lot. I was much more labile in my emotions, so I'd be huge happy and then crashing sadness, and yeah, very teary and unable to which was partly the brain injury and partly the experience of it all, the trauma of it all, and affected my speech, my eyesight. So I had a lot of the peripheral was lost, and then also I was moving my eyes but not necessarily taking the information in. So I couldn't cross a road because I wasn't. I would look, but I wouldn't necessarily register that there actually is a car there. It's sort of like I'm looking but not necessarily seeing it, so I wasn't quite safe. Yeah, so balance. Yeah.
Is there anything you still have trouble with?
I think there must be things that I've compensated for and got used to, and I don't notice.
Yeah.
But I definitely noticed that my memory's a bit affected. Like I rely a lot more on writing everything down, which people say, oh, they have to too, but I have noticed a slight difference, especially recalling things. So like I can have known Zhen for years and then go to say his name and I gone.
Yeah.
And then I have to sit there and wait quite a while for it to come into my memory. So a lot of word finding difficulty, that's one. And like fine motor's just not quite what it used to be. And maybe my balance is not quite as good. Yeah, so little things. Yeah. But it's something I'll never stop working on, because they reckon I learned a lot about brain plasticity, where they used to think that the brain was very mechanical, so if you damaged a part it didn't work, and then they're saying no.
But now they know.
Yeah, and that was the big hope for me, you know, that I could, if I kept working on my fingers, I could get my hand functioning again, which I did. It's heaps of work. Like even just stuff like I'd have friends over and we'd play cards, and then I'd be sitting there and like move one card after the other just over to one pile and then to another, and while I'm chatting or whatever. Yeah. And yeah.
When I first saw your handwriting, I thought it was weird. Yeah, not until you told me the story, then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it all clicked.
My handwriting's terrible.
I never had the best, but it definitely didn't make it any better.
My friend's dad had a stroke, and he lost his language ability. First time I've ever heard of it, yeah. So he still knows what everything was, but he just couldn't say the name of it. He just couldn't speak.
So he knew what other people were saying.
Yeah. And
when they refer to a tree or something, you know.
Yeah, because it could have affected both. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, there'll be receptive language where they can understand and comprehend, and then there's the expressives to be able to.
Yeah, I knew a guy who's
say with.
He grew up in a Vietnamese family. Couldn't speak a word of Vietnamese, maybe a couple of words, but since his parents spoke with each other in Vietnamese, he could hear it perfectly. He just couldn't produce it himself.
That's weird, huh? I wonder how my friend's dad was thinking, having lost his language.
Well, you
know, like we tend to think in a language.
But you said that you don't. You don't think in a language.
I wonder.
I think in a language.
Alright, here's a question. Do your thoughts form language? Or does language form thoughts?
You mean culturally or in the individual?
Individual.
In the individual.
Oh, as generally. You know, do you
so you mean like, if you didn't know a language, thoughts would just be this like blob of information.
And you still think?
Or do you need a language in order to...
Yeah, do you still need a language to actually be able to think properly, you know, have your thought process?
Well, my old boy reckons he thinks in pictures.
I think in pictures. I reckon I think in pictures.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I have a little voice that pretty much thinks at the same speed as I can talk. And it says things in English. Yeah.
What about you?
It must be a bit of both. Sometimes I must get just like a feeling about an idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then I must be sometimes seeing things, and then a talking voice, but never like words, as in like printed words.
Printed words. I don't get printed words.
No, not printed words, but more like a voice.
Yeah.
But it's funny how people vary in that, in how they, and bilingual people will often say that they chop and change in their mind when they're thinking about what they're going to do tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Half will be in French, and then another part of the thought will be in English or something. And then other people will find that to be a completely foreign concept, to actually have thoughts that are formed in any, language. And they'll just say it's kind of like its own language. It's just like a thought language. It doesn't have words or anything, just a process that is unique. But this is everybody's life every day. This is their internal experience. And most people assume that everybody else is having roughly the same experience. But when you start probing, you find out there's a richness to everyone's experience. And if I were to somehow step into your mind and see what you see and your thoughts as they happen, it might be so bizarre to me, that I wouldn't know what's here or there, like an acid trip or something.
Mm.
And for other people to step into my mind
true.
might be so bizarre, like up is down and left is right.
Yeah.
But we all go about it as though people don't even talk about it. The assumption is just that everyone's having roughly the same experience.
Yeah.
And we could all be seeing a different shade of colors, for all we know.
Yeah, like what is it really like for someone who's colorblind to walk around in the world and to comment on a beautiful day? Yeah.
I mean, even people
is a
who are not
beautiful day?
colorblind, like red to me could be like blue to you,
Yeah.
but we all call it red, so we never know if we're seeing the actual color itself, the same color, the same shade of color. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be in the podcast. Just gonna take a look.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Gonna take a dump.
Yeah. So, would you just pick, like, edit it to what you need?
Hmm? Huh?
Edit it to what you
Probably
need.
gonna cut some parts out. Haven't done this for a long time. Sitting around the fire.
Oh, it's so good, man. Do you want some mushies?
Sure thing. I'll grab my fork. Where's my fork? Over there.
I think, just by looking, some of the sausages got a bit overcooked, but we tried.
I don't mind eating charcoal. You don't get. Just gotta find my spoon, that's all.
Actually, I'll just check that out, though.
Chow chow.
Yeah.
Chow time.
You want another beer?
No, I'm right. I still got my first. Yeah, I'll just have the one. Thank you for that, though. Yeah, I really don't drink.
Yeah.
I just, every now and then I'll have one glass of wine or a beer.
Alright, I'm
Every
gonna
now and
steal one of this from you.
You can have quite a few if you like.
Alright, cool. Thanks, man. Looking really good. Let me see if it's ready. Mmm. It's so smoky.
Oh, yeah?
Mmm.
You want to grab what you want? Or?
Is it hot?
Yeah, it is.
Juggle this until it cools down.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't think about food at all.
Mmm.
I have a rat in the backyard that was making every possible variation of disturbing noise last night.
Ugh.
And I didn't get to sleep until daylight.
Still on that.
Tastes good.
Yeah, pretty good. Be better with some salt, I guess. But I'm kind of lazy to.
Why don't you put some wasabi peas in there or something?
That's a pretty good idea. You're just like me. Every time I do something like this, people be going like, ew! Wasabi mushroom. Fuck, that's really good. I gotta edit the swearing bit out too. But
That's how discoveries are made.
shit. That's a brilliant idea, actually.
I do like to give things a go, hey.
Huh?
Because you never know. You could stumble across something you love.
Yeah, man. Gotta be a pioneer. Because it's a little bit salty too, wasabi peas. Really adds to the flavor.
Try wrapping a mushroom around this.
You want some wasabi peas to go with it?
I like to try the combo.
Go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. That got me started. Now I'm a little bit hungry.
So is there anything that you used to think, you know, like a way that you used to see the world, that has completely changed? Like values or priorities?
There was a big, like, for me, a big realization of what my priorities were, like, sort of brought to the forefront, maybe.
It's like a discovery, not a change.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like, to go, no, yes, that's definitely important to me, because I remember having these feelings, like, thinking about, suddenly, it was when I first woke up from my coma and I was out of it, and I was like, I was just so happy to be able to see my mum and dad came to Africa, to the hospital, seeing them, and then talking to my brother and sister on the phone, and then talking to my mates on the phone, and realising that I could have never got the chance to talk to them again. I could have just gone to sleep and then that was it. That made me feel like people and humans, to me, like interaction and friends and family are very, very high on my importance list. And then for me, it like really hit me with my personal faith that for me, loving God and being in a relationship with God was also a huge thing for me, because when in that moment where I'd lost my physical health and could have died, it sort of like brought a lot of things into perspective. Like suddenly having a degree and having a job and having a car, they meant nothing to me. Like I just was shocked at how little they meant compared to like being able to see my family and being able to just be with them and being able to like knowing that I've got this relationship with God, that I can be have Him in my life and make that a priority. That the other things, worrying about, worrying about what new clothing piece I'm going to buy, so I'm looking good.
Yeah.
And nothing like even worrying about what people think. I think I dance more silly now. One, because I care less about what people think, but also because I actually at one stage couldn't dance. I wasn't able to, and so then when I had done enough rehab to be able to dance, my first time I danced, I was weeping, man. It was the most beautiful experience of dancing I've ever done, because I could have never been able to do that again. I don't know, like dancing was just a bit of fun, but for me it was like, wow, I could have not been able to do that. So when I could, it was amazing. Even the first time I could run, it was amazing. But yeah, so that was a big thing. Love God. For me, it was loving God with all my heart, and then loving people and caring about people. And the other things, not so much. So yeah, I guess and a lot of things became less important.
Do you think that the importance of these things can be communicated to another person in a way that, like without them having to go through a near-death experience, that the value in these things can be realized by a person just sitting there in contemplation or having a conversation with someone that, like stirs this in them or brings it to the fore?
I think something like talking about death or asking someone, having that conversation about what they actually value or what's most important, or what would you do if you had 1 month left on Earth? Okay, you ask them, okay, tell me, what would you do, or how would you live that 1 month? And oftentimes I think perhaps their more deeper values might come out.
Yeah.
But I also think it's hard. Like even for me, it was that shock and the physical feelings I felt that really knocked it into me. That realization.
It wasn't you knocking it into you. It was just circumstance bringing it out.
Yeah, and I can even say that even though I know I do not want to forget that, I still get caught up with life and starting to worry about the most trivial things and missing the main point so easily, which frustrates me really, because I know what's important to me, but I still find myself worrying about things
I've often been quite envious when I've seen interviews with people who've been through war or just prolonged periods of suffering, and they seem so resolute in their decisions about life. Their priorities are just so clear to them. They don't seem, maybe it's only because I'm seeing them in that interview, having dwelled on the subject long enough to bring it all back for them, but there seems to be no question in their mind what's important, and even how to decide where something should fit in their priorities, suggest something new. And I've often been quite envious, because for me that's always a question mark, or a series of question marks hovering in my mind. Is, yes, apparently something's important to me, but will it be tomorrow? And will it always be? And is it right for that to be the important thing for me? And all these questions that go unanswered, and it doesn't seem to allow for that same amount of confidence. And I know it's silly to wish for something horrible to happen to me to really make it obvious, but there have been times where I have envied people that have been through hardship so as to come into such close contact with their values that it's obvious to them at all times. So in a sense it's nice to hear that even the person who's had it shocked into them, that there still is distraction and temptation to...
And it's like those core values sink deeper into the subconscious, and it's not at the forefront of your mind. So and like another example that's not to life or death experience, but when I was doing work in Southern Africa, I had an experience where I went for quite a while with not much variety of food and no fruit and a lot of maize, and I went from in Australia in Perth just go to the supermarket and get whatever I want, and it was just like I ate well, and then to go to having a very limited diet, lots of starch, and missing things like fruit. There was a day, it must have been after about 2.5 months, possibly 3 months, where we were back in South Africa, and we had an apple, and we got an apple, and I remember savouring the apple like it was the most precious thing ever, like just eating it and enjoying every single bite, and then not stopping when I got to the usual core. I ate everything except for the little stalk at the end, because I was just so thankful for it and grateful for it, and thinking to myself, I am never gonna take food for granted again. But then within 3 months of being back in Perth, eating apples, whatever.
Yeah. Or take one last look at it and go, nah.
No, I can't even be bothered taking the last bite, you know. and you know, I just have to try and keep reminding myself of that experience I had in order to keep grateful. But it's so easily, I find, sinks away into your subconscious, like you forget about it, and you just get used to the lifestyle you're in at the time. Yeah.
I always feel like I'm leaving on extra time, you know, because of the childhood accident, which was supposed to take my life, flying out of the truck, carrying my face open. I always feel like I think I'm quite thankful for that experience. Yeah. It makes me always think twice about my decisions in life, and the important things. In a way, it also makes you care less about things, I guess, in a good way, like trivial stuff.
Yeah, I think I've talked to you about that, Zen, where I felt a bit like I'm on bonus time now. Therefore,
extra time.
I don't have to worry too much, because it's like, well, this is just a bit of extra now.
Yeah. I always feel this way.
And that's the way I've framed my experience, you know. I just had a car accident and I've rehabilitated, but for me, I still, for some reason, feel that this is extra time, this is bonus time.
Definitely.
Takes the pressure off, hey?
Yeah,
takes the pressure off trying to make it too amazing.
It makes you think, you know what, no matter what I do, I'm still going to die anyway, so I might as well have fun. Oh, the smoke! Oh, this is fun.
It doesn't matter anyway.
Shift a bit. If I shift a bit, the mic will be out of position. Okay. All right.
Did you want another sausage?
I don't mind.
Got heaps of mushies there as well.
Alright, I'll steal the mushroom.
Extra time.
They're good mushrooms, though. What do you reckon?
Mushies are always good.
I wonder if I've misinterpreted some things that have happened to me, or just had an unfortunate interpretation. Because there's been probably 100 times in my life where I almost fell out of a tree, you know, at a height that I would have been injured, you know. Or I've almost been hit by a car, and who knows what may have happened then.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had all these near misses, but I've scraped through in good health. But instead of that shocking me into a reprioritization or into discovering some deeper value, or even to come to the conclusion that I'm lucky to be alive. Instead, it's kind of fed into this silly notion of invincibility, you know? And because I survived, it must be because I'm supposed to survive, you know? That kind of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that just feeds into ego, you know, into the sense that I'm somehow important to this world, alive, you know, and I suppose it's led me to be a little bit, to take less seriously the prospect of dying, you know, the prospect of having a finite amount of time. It's been far more salient to me that every day has been life, you know. I've got no recollection of being born or beginning, and I've got no concrete evidence that I will die. I've got ideas, theories, evidence around me, but none in my experience. And so, taking all of that together, it's led to a rather infantile, I would say, or immature view that life is just an ongoing experience of living that doesn't have a beginning or an end, you know? And I just wonder what would happen if something more shocking happened to me, you know, rather than me step out onto the road, hearing a car horn and stepping back and just missing it, but actually falling out onto the road helplessly and have a car just stop, you know, or even hit me a little and drag me a while. Mm. You know, something more serious. I wonder if it might shock me differently.
Yeah, because you've got a very tangible experience of
life being... Every time I check in, life is still going. Doesn't seem to be coming to an end. Doesn't seem to be a winding down or anything like that. It's as ongoing as it ever has been. And I can't recall beginning. It's like with my dreams. I can't recall ever the start of a dream. I just seem to be in a process that's picked up from something and carrying on. No clear-cut beginning and no clear-cut end. So while I would wish for people, on one hand, wish for them to have as much luck as I've had, to not have been seriously injured, to not have had haven't had anybody really close to me die yet, and that's, you know, that's as imminent and inevitable as anything else could be. But to have not had the experience yet allows me, permits me, it seems, carry on with this infantile view of not immortality, but just that life as being an endless and ongoing experience.
Yeah.
But I was saying to Zhen on the way here that every now and then, just in, I don't know, maybe the last few years, every now and then it occurs to me that time is running out. So obviously somewhere in the back of my mind,
fear of death.
Yeah, the prospect of, you know, something is putting two and two together in the back of my mind and saying, you know, you shouldn't be too attached to this idea of life being ongoing. You know, all the evidence around you is that people do die, and that since you are a person, Shaun, you are most likely going to die, and that should matter. Because when people give a terminal diagnosis, it matters to them, and they change things. They behave differently, and certain things that mattered before don't matter, and so on.
Yeah.
So I guess, long story short, I'm in a kind of a limbo.
Yeah, I definitely have to say that another thing that changed with me was just, well, not change, but become at the forefront of my mind was to try and make sure I really enjoy life, enjoy every moment, and not necessarily to be frivolous or reckless, but just to remember to appreciate life. And and an example was just sitting with Zhen one day, having a coffee, and he reminded me to experience that coffee. What does it taste like? Enjoy it, rather than it just be like, oh yeah, it's time to have a coffee, just get a bit of energy, and to just experience that moment and enjoy it, because you never know when the last one will be, and every single moment is precious. That's something that else came to my mind, and it did make it. For example, I really struggle to watch TV now, because I sort of think, gosh, I got this little bit of time to live. I just want to try and make the most of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like watching TV is not quite doing that for me. Some people obviously watch TV to wind down and relax and have some time to not have to do anything, and with busy lives that might be a nice thing. But for me, I would rather be doing something like this, chatting to people, than watching TV. And
I feel that way every time the ad breaks come on, and it'll be 2 or 3 ads in, and I realize this time has just gone. There goes 5 minutes of my life, and it doesn't seem to have contributed anything meaningfully. It's essentially seems like it's been a waste of time. I'm not a fan of TV either. But I get the same way if I deliberately watch something, and it's not absorbing me completely. I'll be watching something, and it's eventually it'll dawn on me that this, the story is not as engaging as I thought it might be. I start to wonder what else I could be doing. Yeah.
As a mystic Christian, right? As you call yourself, am I right?
Yeah.
What are your views on the afterlife?
Yeah, well, that does change perspective on death, because as a born-again Christian, the idea is that God created the world and created Adam and Eve with this idea of being in communion with people, and then there was just that choice for Adam and Eve to they could have everything except eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they chose to do that, which separated them from God, which meant that to be connected with God means to accept Christ, who God sent as the one to basically God in the flesh, to live like us, among us, as a human, but then die and be the ultimate sacrifice so that we can be in communion with God. Sacrifice as in they would usually the Jews would sacrifice like an animal to put their sin on the animal if they've done something wrong, but that is like this ongoing process that has to keep happening, whereas Christ came so that we could die, so he died so that we could find relationship with God, and meaning that we were made righteous so that we can go to heaven. And so that means, as a Christian, I believe that when I die, I will, my spirit will go and be in communion with God for eternity.
What do you mean by communion?
Communion, as in with God, praising God, being in His presence.
So would you say that you are, in a way, part of God? Say what does being made in His image mean? Does it mean that you are part of Him, like a droplet of water from an ocean?
Yeah, not quite like that, but that we have similarities to Him. So there's that a connection that was there. from the beginning when He made us in His image. But it's not that we are part of God as such, but we are His children, so that we can be in a loving relationship. Yeah. And so it means that, like the Apostle Paul says, to live is Christ and to die is gain. So to live on earth means you get to enjoy the kingdom of God on earth, loving people, being in relationship with God, and then to die, you get to go be with God Himself.
But would you still be Andrew?
Yes.
You would?
Yeah. With a transformed body, because I guess most people die when they're older and their body's fallen apart. But the idea is a transformed body, and what that exactly looks like, I don't know. But I've talked to someone and they think, well, it'd be when you're just an adult, so maybe at your prime, whatever that is. For a male, I think it's 25. Your myelin sheaths are fully formed in your brain, and you're probably at the extent of your muscle growth and fully formed. And it could mean that you're even how you were meant to be if you were perfect.
Yeah,
like if Adam never sinned, because sin has affected our mind and our body as well. So yeah, someone that say has a disability, they would not have one when they're in heaven. If they can't walk, they would have this new body that was probably exactly how Adam looked originally, which might be different.
So there's still a male and female version of angels, or
perhaps.
Okay.
I don't know what angels look like. I don't quite get that. But there'll be
a male and female version of, say, you after you.
Yeah. And in fact, back to what you're saying about being in the image of God, the idea is that He has feminine and masculine qualities. So I don't know exactly what God would look like, but if we are made in His image, it means that females are made in His image and males are as well. So there must be this sort of mix. And I don't know if that's in His figure or in His person, in His nature. So He would have maternal instincts as well as paternal instincts. Yeah.
I remember we talked about the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. It being within us. How do you interpret that? I know I'm asking you the same question again. Yeah.
No, it's a good one, because in the Old Testament, it always said that God was with them, with the people. So he would meet them in an external sense, like He would come down as a cloud of fire or something like that, or as a burning bush to Moses. Whereas in the New Testament, Christ says that when He dies, He will send a helper, and that's the Holy Spirit, which comes within us. And so, it's like there is a Christ within us, or a spirit within us.
Is that like, would you describe it as like our conscience? Sort of.
No, I don't think so, because I think it differs in the fact that it's not that all the answers are within your soul, sort of thing, or true peace is within your soul. I think it's like that Christ gives you a peace in your heart, and directs your path, or the Spirit of God directs your path, and it's a matter of listening to that and opening yourself up to that. So there's still a separation between your fleshly person and your spirit. Yeah.
But that spirit is not you, so to say. So there's the spirit, there's the flesh, and what else?
The soul. which is your mind and your emotions.
Your memories, pretty much, right?
Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which the idea is that when you die, your soul finishes, which is life. Your body stays in the earth. Your soul finishes, and
your soul
spirit,
actually finishes.
Yeah, and it's your spirit that goes up to heaven.
What's the difference between soul and spirit then? Does the spirit still possess the memories and emotions of the soul?
No. I don't believe it does.
So you don't think you remember anything that happens during...
Well, people always say, like, oh yeah, you'll be able to see all these people in heaven that you know. But Christ does say, like, he was questioned on whether, say you married one person and they died, and then you married another person and they died, and then you married another person. Would you be married to them all in heaven? And he said, no, there is no marriage in heaven. It's not like that. There isn't. And I think that might mean, that's extrapolation, but I think that might mean that relationships it might not be something that you...
Yes.
No.
It's not so human-like, that's full of, like, jealousy and possession and, like, monogamy, something more sexual. Maybe all these things would be gone. Right? Everyone just be in really good relationship. There's no my wife and your husband and that sort of thing. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried about dying.
So you have faith. Huh?
Yeah. Like I feel a peace about it. Like I feel ready whenever. Which is something that I did when I had to organise those funeral arrangements and talk about doing my will and the possibility of death. I did come to a place, at a point before I left. Yeah, that's when I thought, you know what, I'm actually okay. You know, if it really does happen, it's sad because I won't be able to get to see the people that I love. But I think I was very peaceful about it. Yeah.
I had a moment, and it had to do with wills. Someone had prompted me that if I don't have a will, I should write one. And it caused me to think that there were certain relationships in my life that I felt had some unfinished business, and that if I were to find myself suddenly on my deathbed, I could possibly regret that I hadn't said everything, and that but that also if I were on my deathbed, I would really, really, really want to finish that business. You know? I would really want for people that I love to know that I love them, and so over probably a span of a few months, I did go through, in my contemplation and in my relationship with people, finishing the business, and did find at the end of that that death could come any time now, and the most important things were taken care of.
Yeah.
And I mean, much as I would wish for anybody to go through that process, it's not something that I came to happily, you know, something that was prompted from the outside. And I guess I'm just a stickler. I won't let myself get away with denial. And it did occur to me that I really did have unfinished business, and that just didn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. It made me afraid of death. It made me not want to take any risks. You know, it made me want to stay alive, and to the detriment of whatever else was going on.
Yep.
But I still feel a certain level of comfort that if I should die, that it's really just down to the dying now. The rest of the business is taken care of. So I don't know what dying will be like, but I do know what it is to feel a sense of unfinished business, and how sad and even desperate I would be in my dying moments to resolve those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that seems to be taken care of now. And I don't want to go any further through life without like, I don't want to create any unfinished business. Yeah? I would like to live a life where death could come any time, and that would be just, it would be just fine. Yeah.
So that would look like having a practice of, if you do wrong someone or there is a problem, that you go to them straight away and discuss it, and also tell people how you really feel about them, and ideally, how much you care about them or things like that. Would that be?
Whether it's directly, sitting someone down and saying, I really care about you, and I don't want you to ever think that I don't.
Yeah.
Or whether it's just considering that I, car accident and dying and thinking of them, that they wouldn't feel that there's something they didn't know, something important they didn't know, that they would have a question for me that they can't ask anymore. And as I think through the people in my life, well, it's hard to cut through the kind of sadness that's inevitable. I feel as though each person would sort of grieve healthily and move through the process healthily, without this sense of there being this weight of unfinished business. Something he really, really never got around to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I when I was asked to go just resolve any issues and look at all your relationships, I had some of the most amazing experiences, like going to a mate and saying, I really love our times we've had together, and I just told him that I loved him, and it was a bit like, felt a bit
out of place,
a little bit weird to say, but no, that's how I felt though. I really cared about him like a brother, and I loved him, and I said that, and it was actually awesome, and I don't regret it. And I think he said he loved me back, and I was like, mate, thanks. And certainly when I got to that point where I woke up and I could have had passed away, I did think back to that, and I was like, I'm so glad I did say that, because that could have been something that I never got to say to that person, and they would never realise that
they might have always wondered.
That I really valued them as a person. Yeah. So it was, I think it's good to do for people to do that. Even as awkward as it might seem for blokes to be talking about, how much they care about each other.
It never seems to be a right time.
I'll tell you what, when you, I reckon it's worth it.
Like, hey bro, I love you. Love you. Oh, what?
I don't know.
What?
I think maybe it's just better than
I said it though. I mean, that's what I would say.
I said my shirt's blue.
Yeah, my shirt's blue.
Man, the stars are nice. I used to see shooting stars every single night. I haven't lifted my head for a long time.
I was surprised when I saw more than one shooting star in one night. It was when I was down south, and I realised it's not that they're rare. I think it's more that we just can't see them in Perth.
No, you can. You just don't look up enough.
Oh, you'll probably see less.
We're seeing more here, I think, because we're away from a bit more of the light pollution, aren't we?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
And you see satellites occasionally.
Yeah, we used to count shooting stars when we go camping, you count like 5 a night.
Oh, something I was meant to say before. When you were talking about that bloke that did a funeral before he died, I've actually seen something. It was a like a video series I watched. I was learning about some stuff, and this bloke, he said this was an idea of, rather than say you're doing a speech at your parents' funeral about their life and about how much they mean to you, where all their friends that they've had throughout their life, come along, and they all, like you were saying, talking about all these lovely things about that person. He recommends doing not a funeral, but just like a celebratory night where you invite all their friends or they can organise it, or you can organise it. But I guess like when they're sort of like even 60s or 70s, invite all friends and family that are important to them, and organise for people to get up and do speeches, so that they can actually hear them. So your family or your parents or whoever you're doing it for can hear these speeches. And I thought that was a cool idea. So it's not called a funeral. It's like a life celebration event.
Well, oftentimes people wish that for their funeral, that it be instead, rather than something sad, that it be considered to be a celebration of life. A lot of people prefer that. Looking forward to it's not the right term, I think, but prefer for that to be the sort of mood of the occasion, rather than grieving and sadness.
I always picture the perfect way for me to die would be to die smiling, thinking that I could finally take a rest now. After I've done so much for people, and I've done my best. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I've done my best, and I've lived a rather tiring life.
That's something too, is to be able to ask yourself, have I done my best?
Yeah.
And to get a resounding yes.
Yeah.
From yourself, from your soul.
I really don't want regrets. And maybe that's another good reason to go to a funeral or to talk about death with friends, is because it can help remind you to not have in order to not have regrets.
Live
make sure you
such
do.
That you don't.
Live such that you don't, and perhaps take a few risks about ideas, things that you do want to do, but you sort of think, oh, what if it doesn't work out? To actually have a go and maybe do it. Because I think that probably is my only fear in life, would be to be on my deathbed and
have so much regret.
Have this shocking feeling like, wow, I was meant to do that, but I didn't, and this is it. I cannot go back. So I don't want that. And I can do something about that, can't I?
I remember hearing about some philosopher who, searching for the meaning of life, went through all of the other philosophers' works on the meaning of life, and came to the determination that the meaning of life is learning how to die. And I thought that was interesting. My interpretation of that is that learning how to die well. And my interpretation of that is, if you imagine the best possible death for yourself, and like Zhen said, it'd be smiling and having a sense of finishing, of having done enough.
Yeah.
For me, I would also include, and this is just the best possible case, is to be surrounded by people who love me and who I love, and who know it, and who know that I'm dying, and are all at peace with that. This is just picture perfect kind of scenario. But the challenge is, you can't just organise that on the day. You have to live, in order for people to show up to your deathbed. The number of people that will actually come to you depends very much on your relationship with them over the course of your whole life. So in order to die well, one must live well. One must live in such a way. And so I like that, and that stuck with me.
And perhaps it won't be so painful for those friends and family if you also have cultivated that idea of always letting them know how you feel about them, and those sort of ideas.
Yeah. Be mushy.
It will take that
be mushy.
pain away.
Yeah, watch out. The staples are nasty.
I learned some interesting things about death when I was doing my gerontology unit at uni. Because they were talking about, one aspect was that idea that different cultures have different views on age and getting old and then dying. And the general idea was that Western culture tends to idolise youth, and then as youth fades, it's a downward experience. So you peak in your youth when you're beautiful and your skin's taut and you're full of energy, and then it's just a decline of your life.
Yeah,
Whereas-
maintenance and
Yeah.
slow, frail.
and therefore, it's a sad experience at the end of life. Whereas in other cultures, and I couldn't name a particular culture, other cultures, perhaps many Asian countries, there's a great respect for elders, where because of this idea that they've grown in wisdom and they've had years of experience, and they're to be revered and respected, and that will continue until they pass away. And I think that may change the view of death, perhaps.
You mean if that cultural norm should change?
Maybe. It should be a celebration of the end of life, perhaps, rather than a terrible thing that they've decreased in ability to the point where they now can no longer live anymore.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
I have a question. Is it because death is pretty much unknown, right, to a lot of people. I mean, we can say all we want. Yeah, there's life after death, or there's just oblivion, nothing.
And
yeah. But it is the unknown to us, the ultimate unknown. And is it the unknown that really scares people, or is it losing what we know that scares us?
Sorry, say it again.
Is it the unknown that scares people, or is it losing what you know that truly scares you? Yeah.
I personally think it would be
The latter?
The latter, because it's
Very thin.
scared of letting go.
Yeah. Because I had a conversation with my friend the other day, and we're talking about flying cockroaches, like those I hate the most. Yeah. I'm just totally afraid of flying cockroaches. And we're talking about if it's the cockroach that's scared. What if we have like a fake one that looks exactly like a replica that looks exactly like the real cockroach? Would you be afraid to hold it in your hand? As you said, no. I said, then it's not really the cockroach, the look of the cockroach that scares you. Yeah? It's what you feel the cockroach might potentially do to you that scares you. Yeah. So we're not really scared of the death, I guess. We're scared of losing what we're attached to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Humans have a funny thing. I don't know if it's present in any other creature. It's that we have this curious relationship with the unknown. It's that most animals will establish themselves in their habitat and never venture from it. It's just an ongoing process of securing and better coming to know and understand their circumstance. Whereas humans will look at a cave, that's just black, and we'll have this curious relationship with it. We'll both be terrified of what's possible in there, but drawn to it as well. Whether someone in the group will want to light a fire on a stick and go into that cave just to find out.
I think it's beautiful. I think the unknown is beautiful, and it's what keeps us going. Yeah? Imagine if this whole world is just Earth, and that's it. There's no space, nothing out there. Yeah?
You mean we gradually just come to know it through and through, understand it completely.
Yeah.
There's an answer to every question.
Yeah.
And now it's just a process of
there's no
repeating.
God, no religion, no doubt about anything, and we already know it all. How terrible would it be? Yeah, there's nothing to look forward to, no unknown there to intrigue us.
I don't think it's possible. One thing that's sure, even about the universe, is that it continuously moves from these aren't my words, a continuous advance into novelty. There's always a motion in each person to want to know more about something, to have a curiosity and venture forth. But even, if you take the idea of the Big Bang, such simplicity, the entire universe in a singularity, however bewildering that might be, but it's just a single thing emerging into increasing complexity, stars and galaxies, and then life, and and then what's next? Life, then humans are going to create virtual realities within realities, and I don't sense there's ever a stagnation of that. It seems as though it's either a push in us as humans, or it's a push through and through. The whole thing is moving into novelty, something it's never seen before, never done before.
I think there's many ways to call it, many different words, right? But it's all referring to one thing: time, creation, memories, change. I think it's all a
Change.
gift.
That's what Buddha said, right?
A gift from God, who is the timeless. Yeah. So all this is. A lot of people see change as a bad thing, but I think change might be. It's a gift. It's a story. All these memories and time, creation, everything that's happening, the unknown. There can only be the unknown when there's time, right? When there's something out there that we haven't learned about, haven't experienced.
Yeah, someone asked me, or I was discussing with someone, would you want to know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life? So you had the exact plan of how you're going to do it. Like, you were going to work in this job for 5 years, and then you were going to work in this job, and you were going to do this all the way to the end of your life. Would you want that?
I've asked people this.
I said no, because I was thinking, when I don't know, I have a general idea of things I would like to do, but when I don't know, it creates like an infinite possibilities of my future. Whereas if I was to know, it boxes it into a very finite experience, and that to me is terrible.
Yeah.
I want to have that hope of the unknown.
It's like
that there could be.
It's like hearing a good song on the radio is different from putting it on yourself, searching and then playing it on YouTube. When you hear it on the radio, it's like, whoa!
I've heard
I really
that.
love this song.
That was
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. No, I've asked people, would you want to know this and that about their life? Would you want to know when and the circumstance around your death and so on? And I've been surprised. I thought that there would be a mixed bag. Half of people would say, yeah, I'd want to know so that I can, summarize my life or something like that. That I can somehow prepare for that moment and live confidently in the meantime, knowing that it's not my time yet, so I can take as many risks as I like, because I know it's not going to happen until I'm 50-something. But actually, everybody says I wouldn't want to know.
Yeah.
That I've asked anyway. And, But life for me is always a process of finding out. Ever since late high school, I got this stuck in my head that I could come to some kind of understanding, that I could know, that I could just know, have a bedrock foundation of understanding, and then just navigate confidently because I know what's going on, I know what the deal is, I know what I should and shouldn't do, and I can just do that, and do the right thing all the time. But despite my trying very, very hard to find a solid ground on which to stand, life always throws me curveballs and reveals to me that I don't know, and that being in that state of not knowing and like uncertainty, it's sort of this curious openness. It seems to be it's scary, because anything could be the case. I just don't know. It lays me open, vulnerable but open to any and all possibility, and that's much more full and rich than if I were to know, like you said, Zhen, like the exact path of my life. I think I'd become cocky and arrogant for a start, because I know exactly how things are going to play out. But then for very soon after that, I think I would just wish that there could be something else. I wish that there could be something that might happen that would surprise me, that I could find out rather than to already know.
Yeah.
To know something is to be quite limited, I think.
Yeah.
To not know is to be unbounded and free.
Yeah, and even though I say I want to have that ultimate unknown, I think I still feel that sense at the end of my life that I personally feel certainty of my ending, of going to heaven and being with God, but I have that certainty in faith, which is still not.
It's not a knowing.
100%.
I know, yeah.
Experience, and
I
I think that's important. I think that's important to have it like that, because I think there's something beautiful about having to have faith about something.
Yeah, I think faith is different from knowing. It's not, and it's different from superstition as well. Different from believing, because you're kind of arrogant when you believe in something, to be true. And if anyone challenges your belief, you go like, no, I know for sure that this is real. But having faith is something that goes beyond.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words.
The thinking level, goes beyond words. You just feel it in the deepest part of your being. Yeah, it's like a hope.
Yeah, that.
For the best things to happen to people and the world and of course yourself ultimately.
Yeah, kind of a mishmash of a hope and a wish as well that it be so, but also there's a conviction that it is so, but that conviction reveals itself somewhere deeper than thoughts and words. It doesn't offer up a rationale. It doesn't say this is why it must be this way. There's something is felt to be true, though I have no evidence. That's what I would call faith. But to put words to it is to not do it justice.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was just thinking about that idea of hope. I think if it wasn't faith, there would be no need for hope. And I think hope is a beautiful thing as well. I think hope is what gives energy and what drives a person to be who they are, having some hope.
Yeah. And I think rationally, even if you put it rationally, it's why wouldn't anyone want to hope and have faith in something good, even if we don't 100% know for sure if it's real or not. Because having that faith and hope makes you makes your life much better.
Yeah. But I would say, I can only speak for myself, but I've only found out what I have faith in. I haven't chosen. There's not a matter of choice in it. It's because I've tried to be a very rational person, tried to rely on hard evidence alone and dismiss anything that doesn't reveal itself to be concrete and measurable.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm honest, I have found out that I have faith in certain things, and I can't change them. I can't say, you know what, I'll flip through a catalogue of faiths and pick and choose what I like. It's like, no matter what I would like to believe or what I think, one thing I have faith in that I have no evidence for, but that I cannot challenge it, is that this world is beautiful, and in some sense exactly as it should be. In some sense there's not a problem that needs to be solved. There's not a big hole in the tear in the fabric of the universe. The human mind likes to think of things in terms of a problem that needs fixing. Certainly my mind works that way. But somewhere deep down there is a faith that this world is perfect, absolutely perfect and beautiful. And at times it reveals itself to be true, but not in words and not in evidence, you know. It's just in these deep moments of contemplation. It's like, and it's been there all my life. I couldn't change it if I wanted to. Even if a person were whipping me and you know, my life was torture, I don't think it could dissuade me from that. It's hardwired. It's faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think looking at things just on hard evidence, as you say, or physical material or scientific way, is like only seeing it from a very small perspective, and I think it is limiting in the your living experience. Yeah.
I didn't actually. I thought about this a couple of days ago. There's no such thing as hard evidence, you know, because our world is pretty much formed out of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're not thinking, like you said, if you're not registering the car that's driving past when you're crossing the road, then the car's not really
In my world.
in your world at all.
Mm.
Yeah. So everything comes down to thoughts, and thoughts are intangible. You can't find thoughts even if you cut open your brain. You know, it's just you can't see it. It's just even what you're seeing, you know, the world, whatever your eyes are processing, they just translate into thoughts. Could you really call it hard evidence in the first place?
Yeah, I definitely have realised, supposed facts. I only take anything with a pinch of salt these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
At first I thought it's a solid ground, you know. It's like an island or a slab of concrete. You know, it's something sure and stable you can stand on. If you've got evidence for something, you've got it. It's in the pocket, and you can move on and further develop your notions beyond that. But time and time again, every single decision I can come to that seems well-founded, you know, is widely agreed upon and all of that, there's cracks in it for a start. You know? If it's an island, then it's floating on a shifting and changing sea, right? And through history, everything that people have come to believe as absolutely true has been challenged and overturned, and the pattern is that continues. Is that whatever, if people are now of the mind that everything is relative and Einstein was correct, then in 1,000 years, or probably a lot less, people will be looking upon Einstein's work as just a stepping stone, as a best fit for the time. Just like we look upon Newton's work as being very advanced for his time, and does a great job in certain circumstances, but ultimately is not speaking of an absolute reality, and questions can always be posed. And so, yeah, the idea of there being any such thing as hard evidence, I think of I've said this to Zhen before. It's like people move from worldview to worldview, like Tarzan swinging from vines. Now, if Tarzan were crazy, he would just let go of a vine and just fly through the air and hope that he gets another vine. But he doesn't. He'll swing, holding the one vine, and he won't let go of it until he's got another vine to grab. You know, so he's got what he feels is a sure grip on the next vine. Then he'll let go of it and swing and swing. And so it's great to see when people move from worldview to worldview, but it's forever holding on. And it's forever needing this worldview to be the right one. You know, people will talk about when they were a kid and they believed in Santa and things like this, and how naive they were and foolish and they should have known better. It's like, hang on. At the time, you needed that to be true. And what do you need to be true now? That, given another 10 years, you will have moved on from and look back on and see as having been, I just needed that to be true at the time, and if I only had known better. So the idea of there being absolute truths that can be known. One thing, my interpretation of this, the story of Adam and Eve, and the taking of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, as being, as you say, the act which separated man or humans from God, is this, how I see that act, as a metaphor, symbolic, is that it's the first time we decided something was true, that we know something, that we came to some kind of conclusion. We decided, for example, what the Garden of Eden really is. Make a decision, decide that it's so, and therefore limit it, put it in a box and say, I know this, and then you get bored with it and so on. Whereas to not know, as I said before, to not know seems to lay me open to finding out rather than to being confirming what I think is true.
I think truth sort of represents, I see truth as a representation of God, because we are all on this journey to find truth, be it scientists or religious people. We want to find this one absolute truth that doesn't change, but anything that falls within time changes, because it just keeps changing. So time and time again, we just keep our version of truth just keeps failing us. So it seems like we are all on the journey to find God in a way. To seek God, like in Waking Life. This life is about you saying no to God. And finally, yes. And so that saying that goes, regardless how perverted a desire is, there's always a desire to seek light. At the end of it all, I think we're all trying to find our way back, in a sense. And that's been driving us. That's what curiosity is.
Somebody said humans do best when they have one foot in the known and then the other foot in chaos. That if a person is entirely in chaos, then they don't do very well, and if a person is completely certain, beholden to a particular view, they stagnate and they don't do very well. It's like this fire, right? There's a certainty of it being contained and that it's a fire, it's familiar in that sense, but it's chaotic and it's forever revealing itself. We're finding out what this fire is doing, we're not deciding. If we just had a video of this fire and we were just watching the video for the 10th time, it wouldn't be the same. There's something about it being fresh and revealing to us that keeps the interest.
Yeah, I was thinking about how that would look in my life, and I think it would be, well, from a faith point of view, it'd be like I have certainty of who God is and my relationship with Him and going to heaven. But as for the plans that He has for my life, I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I'm called to follow each day, follow what He says. But I don't know exactly what that looks like for the rest of my life. But I think that is what helps excite me, that I have to take each day and see and hear from God to direct my path.
I can't remember exactly how he said it, but apparently Jesus said something about not worrying about what food or clothing you'll have tomorrow, but just to, and I have to throw in my own words here, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but I gathered that he meant concern yourself with the appropriate way of living now, and rest in the faith that God will provide what's necessary for you tomorrow. You know, so having plans and so on is not a part of that. It's really just living correctly now is where the focus and energy should be.
Yeah, and absolutely give everything to that day and to the moment, every moment of that day, and not worry about tomorrow. Yeah.
And if it's if it's meant to be, then the appropriate resources will be laid before you. I've had moments where I've been quite peaceful, and for maybe, let's say, 2 days in a row, quite peaceful. And that thought has come to mind. I thought, I really don't know what I'm going to eat tomorrow. But then I allow that thought to pass and carry on in peace. And then, just coincidentally, you could say, someone will pass me a meal, and I haven't had to cook or something. Just little things, little things. It's not enough to build a case for anything, but it has stirred me that it has been coincident with my being peaceful, that life becomes easier, and it becomes easier for me to remain peaceful. It's almost as though I've seemed to have taken one step, even accidentally, in the right direction, and the world, just wants to make sure that I know, yes, that's the right way. So it just kind of opens up, and there's no obstacles, and the next thing for me to do becomes clear, and it's sort of laid out for me. All I seem to have to do is carry on and keep doing my best.
I think one issue with thinking about the future would be that you think about all the why nots and why you shouldn't do it, and what could go wrong, and I think you could talk yourself out of doing those things that are important, that at the end of your life you would regret if you didn't do it. So that would be why, although it's good to think ahead a bit and have a bit of have a bit of a plan of some of the things you're going to do, I think it is really good to not think too much in the future, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons would be because often you're not necessarily thinking about the good parts, but you're probably thinking about why you shouldn't, I don't know, go into a new style of work or try a new thing, or go on that trip that you've always wanted to go on, because you're thinking, I won't have enough money afterwards, or what if it doesn't work out? So it's the unknown, isn't it? So it's scary stuff. Yeah.
I once ran this experiment myself. It's a long time ago now. Where I realized that I kept getting in my own way. I would think to do something, and then I would think maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, and I would weigh it up, and very often decide not to do it. And at the end of a day, I would get a little depressed if I didn't seem to have achieved anything, if I didn't seem to have taken any positive action, but it just, stifled myself considering what I should do. And the sun's going down.
Mm.
And I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to go against the grain. Whenever there's a decision I'm on the fence about, whichever way I lean, I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Just an experiment. It was wild. I had the thought to get on a bus and go to Fremantle, and I just did it. Because I caught myself starting to think, but maybe, and I just went, aha, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I got on that bus, and it was a journey, it was an adventure. It was almost like, do you remember the Truman Show, that movie?
It reminds me
No.
of a Yes Man. Well,
Okay, both Jim Carrey movies. Well, this guy finds out his entire life has been staged. Everybody, his parents, everybody in his life is an actor, and it's a big reality TV show. This was before reality shows. And he gets a little suspicious at one point. He's obviously fallen for it his whole life, but something's going wrong, something's not adding up. And he starts going against the grain. I think he just drives around the block quickly, so it makes it look like he's going to work, but then he comes back and he sees these people behaving strangely, as though they weren't quite ready for him to be there at that time. And similarly, I got to Fremantle, and I just had all these interactions with people that seemed unlikely, and it was almost as though this wasn't set up. I wasn't supposed to be here. I'm an extra in a movie that's, that I'm not supposed to be in this movie. And I'd have an urge to go to shops and just buy a piece of fruit. It's just so weird, I'd never go to the shops just to buy one piece of fruit. But thought arose, and I started to think maybe I should, and I saved some money. I said, no, we're doing it. And I go there, and I just had the most breezy times whenever I went against the grain like this. Life just seemed to flow in this amazing way. And I decided, I realized when I got on that bus actually to go to Fremantle, I realized that when I first had the idea to go to Fremantle, everything that was necessary, all of the drive, all the motivation, all the enthusiasm was there right from the start. It was like part and parcel with the idea. The idea came along with all the enthusiasm to do it. It was only me that gets in the way and thinks, maybe not, maybe that's dangerous, or what could go wrong? Maybe there's something more important I haven't thought of yet. And in the process of contemplating all of that enthusiasm wanes or disappears or leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then I struggle with whatever I do come to think is the right thing to do, and I go, oh, no, it's probably better than that I stay at home and do this other thing. There just doesn't seem to be any motivation to do that thing. It's like the moment passed, the wave that I should have been riding has passed, and now I'm left in what do they call it when there's no wind and there's no waves and the water's just still. There's nothing to ride. You have to generate the energy yourself now. You have to force it to happen for you to get anywhere. But more and more now, I contemplate this question of to what extent I have control, versus me being pushed and pulled by various forces. So I know, for example, when I'm hungry, that I will favour food. My thoughts will tend toward food. I will tend to make decisions involving food. Mm-hmm. Now, how much of that was my control, and how much of that is me being pushed and pulled by forces, unconscious? And similarly, outside forces like the weather very much determine how I feel on a day. But I've just spent so long thinking that rationale, that my decision-making process can really trump anything. It can, if I decide that something's logical for me to do, then come hell or high water, I will be able to overcome all obstacles and make that happen. That will be the final say.
Yeah.
But it's very liberating the times where I have sort of allowed myself to to be taken by a wave, or even actively ride the wave. Whatever the circumstance seems to call for, or whatever the circumstance seems to push me toward, that life seems to flow better when I'm in concordance with that, when I'm accepting of it and going with it, more than me trying to inject my own will into the circumstance. And my will its best place seems to be in my hopes and wishes, which are kind of this private thing. My hopes and wishes is very much my will. I don't know what the best thing really is for somebody, but I always feel it's good to wish them well. That's where my will seems to have its best place. My heart brightens when I wish well upon others, even people who do harm to others. If I can find it in me to love and to wish them well, that seems to be an appropriate, and to want things for them, to want good outcomes, or for things to go well for people. That's me injecting my will. That's me saying I would like it this way and not some other. Yes, it's an imposition, but that seems to be the best place for my will. Whereas in the rest of the day, it seems I'm in error if I am trying to push and pull things to suit myself.
Yeah.
But we do live in a culture where you're supposed to direct your own life. You're supposed to make decisions for yourself and own those decisions. To be proud of a choice you made and to take credit for something that you've chosen to do that's worked out well. To give very little credence to luck and other forces. And to also accept responsibility when things go wrong. And to blame others and all this. The culture has wired my mind in a different way. And it's a slow process. Untying the knots. And
Alright, stay still for 1 second.
What do you want me to be doing? Looking at my fire? Or?
Yeah, just look at the fire. Okay, alright. Don't worry, it won't be in the newsletter.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're saying, and because I've been thinking about that a lot. Partly, from my perspective, I've got this that idea that God's plans for me are plans to prosper and He has great plans for me in my life. Therefore, I always think His plans are probably way more amazing than what I could ever think of, because I have a finite mind and I can only look at my past experience plus what I've learnt and what I can see in front of me. So I think I practice that idea by often waiting for some guidance about what to do and saying yes and having a go and doing it even though it might not look right. Like even my decision to actually resign from my career as a surveyor. I was under articles to become licensed. I put my career on hold, or basically I resigned, with the intention of maybe never coming back, in order to go volunteer in Africa for a year. So that's earning no money and only having enough for the basics. That was I didn't really know what it was going to look like. It didn't seem very wise or logical, but I did it and it was amazing, and it just opened up so much experiences that I would never experienced if I just said no and go, no, I think I just better stay in my comfortable world where I've got this really awesome full drive work car that all my petrol's paid for, and I've got amazing friends that I really care about, and yeah, everything's pretty sweet. And I went out into the big unknown, and it was very risky, not having money, the dangers of sickness, getting malaria and other sicknesses, injury, all sorts. But yeah, it was sort of like saying yes and going with it. And then when opportunities come up, don't think too much about it, and if you feel it, if you got that drive and a bit of energy and you feel like it's pushing you that way, go with it.
What about the waiting? When you say you wait for a bit of guidance, what's it like to be waiting and not to yet have received it? Is that scary at all, or do you feel like you're...
Actually, yeah. I don't think I've ever had to wait long about big things, but it's like not just going off my own thoughts, but I would pray about it, and sit in silence and hope that I can get either a feeling or an audible voice or some sort of inkling that yes, this is going to be a positive thing, even though it actually there might be fears in my own heart, like about
risk,
not having money, not the dangers. Yeah. So waiting, perhaps in most of the circumstances, perhaps waiting might not be the right word. It might be more
listening.
And taking the time to like putting time aside to actually seek God and guidance from God in those things before doing it. And sometimes it might be waiting from the point of view of like praying about something and then I don't get a guidance and then going, okay, maybe I won't go that way, and then it might come up again in the future when it is a good time or the right time. So that'd be the waiting side of it,
I
perhaps.
think we're pretty much the same, aren't we?
Mm.
Yeah, we wait for I wouldn't call it the inner voice because there's no voice. It's just it's like a feeling, like you said. Yeah.
But something not of my doing, not of my mind.
Yeah.
I wait for an outside,
Yeah.
something outside me to say, yeah, I think this is the right way to go.
Yeah.
And if
So
I don't get that, I do feel awash. I feel alone. I've started so many projects and put so many on hold just because it's all me doing it. And I'm just like I was saying, an ocean with no waves, and I'm just deciding on a direction and trying to make it happen.
But perhaps on your smaller decisions, like when you were saying, like, oh, should I go to Freo or not?
Very small.
Like, I still love that idea of going, let's, do it, even though, like, I don't know what it'll be like, and it could be not good.
Yeah.
I reckon it's awesome to do that, because then it opens up an array of possibilities that you were closed off to before.
That's right.
Because it's who you could speak to on the train, it's who you could meet in your travels, it's what you might see when you're going, and whereas you wouldn't have had any of that if you just stayed at home and said.
But even if I had gone out with some kind of intention, that's like you were saying, your plans for your life can only be limited.
Yeah.
And if I had decided, no, I'm going to go to the city, for example, then I would have been fixated on that and dismissive of any other detours, anything else that happens. If the bus breaks down, I'll be like, damn, this is thwarting my plan. Whereas the thought to go to Fremantle, well, I got on that bus not knowing what would happen. And if the bus had broken down, I would have been accepting of that. It would have been part of the adventure. And perhaps those people that I interacted with sensed in me an openness and a patience and this guy is not blinkered. He's not marching toward his own goal. He's kind of ebbing, moving with a certain flow, and is free in a sense, and is available. So if I wanted someone to talk to, that guy stands out. He seems to be available, and so it's even narrow to decide that Fremantle was where I was going to go no matter what. It was more a case of being given to the impulse to head in that direction, but also given to whatever twists and turns come along the way. I may have not ended up in Fremantle. I could have been an adventure all across somewhere else.
Whenever I sense a bit of resistance in that calling, when I feel like, okay, this is something I should be doing, and I sense a bit of resistance, when I think that way, I know it's the right choice. It's the right thing I should do. Like a lot of hikes and trips that we've gone on. Actually, I just couldn't be bothered. Yeah, like it just wasn't. It just wasn't. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to laze around, be comfortable and all this. Yeah, but there's just this feeling within me that says, do it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but partly it's also from me starting to learn that sometimes the more difficult things and the more uncomfortable things are so good for you. Like
absolutely.
my even using my accident as an example, where I had the car accident in Africa and the brain injury, I have learnt so much out of that, and I think there's been such difficulty, but also so much amazing, beautiful things have happened in that time of rehabilitation. And right from this, when I woke up and had those realizations, and some of the most incredible interactions with family and friends, and then lessons learned, and realizing more about emotions and all sorts. Like I actually, someone says, "Oh, if you knew that was going to happen, would you still have gone, and or would you go again, knowing that it would happen?" And I said, "Well, although I don't wish that accident on anyone else, I think I wouldn't have it any other way." It was extremely painful, and it's easy for me to say that now. It was a long, quite difficult journey. And even now, like I was thinking just the other day, like I haven't had much money for a long time, and although I sort of said, "Oh, money's not important," I love four driving, and I haven't been able to afford a four drive. Little things like that. Yeah, it's been like it's a long journey. This whole idea to change my whole career. I'm now doing occupational therapy. I studied that while I was doing my rehabilitation, because I realised how much of an impact the health professionals had on me, literally like giving me hope. And so I was like, I want to contribute more to that. Yeah. But I wouldn't have it any other way now. I think often difficulty makes us stronger and teaches so much. Yeah.
I find the only times when a big change has occurred for me has been when I've hit a wall or rock bottom and been in a deep sadness or suffering.
Sorry.
I think I saw a flag.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Because for as long as there's smooth sailing, I don't seem to need to. There's no cause to adjust, to course correct. It's an easy going with the flow. But when things get rough, of course it's uncomfortable, and I suffer these changes. Afterwards, there's a richness, in suffering that cannot seem to be got from smooth seas, right? And same as you, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. I think each person's suffering has its own treasures to offer, and so I don't know what an appropriate kind of. I would only wish that people find the same of their own suffering, is that there's a wealth in there to be found if one can sit with it and not run away from it, but ask of it, what is this for? What is this? What am I to learn here? And what's am I contributing to this suffering in some way? By being persistent in my being stubborn, or in some vain effort to make it better, or to try and get back to how things were. It's always easier to just try and get back to how it was yesterday when these problems weren't there. But just to sit with them and say, yes, there is this, and allow whatever it has to offer to reveal itself, or blossom, as you know, nice when it happens nicely. It's kind of a blossoming realizations. And in those moments, I realized I cannot have realized this if I hadn't been here. If I hadn't been sitting in this despair or in sadness and in pain as well.
Yeah, I guess it is easy to say difficulty is good when you're not going through really hard times at the time of saying that.
Yeah.
But I still think I want to develop that ability when difficult times come, just to go, yeah, okay, like, I'm not enjoying this, but I know that I'm going to grow from it, and what can I learn from it right now?
Yeah.
And sort of almost embrace it.
Yeah, it's a strange concept, man, to embrace one's pain and suffering. It's like the last thing anybody would want to do.
Guess it's good that it's not good.
It's insane. Only an outside party can say such a thing. or one looking back on something. But even if I love any part of my life as it is now, this is why regret doesn't fit quite well with me. If I'm fond of any part of my life, or if I love life as it is now, then me sitting here rests atop everything that's ever happened to me, good and bad. And so to wish that something horrible that happened to me didn't happen is to almost wish away what's my life as it is now. I kind of see it as a flow of unfolding where each moment kind of rests upon the last, it's contingent on the previous and all the way back. So, for example, I can only relate to somebody about, like certain hardships, like betrayal or even good things. But I can only relate to people to the extent that I've been through similar things, So you'll be able to relate to people in ways that I can't, for having been through what you've been through. And I'm tempted to be envious. I'm not putting a wish out there that I be involved in a car accident or something, but it always seems to me to be a valuable thing to have been through horrible experiences, and they're almost like tools on my belt, so that when I meet people and they've suffered in various ways, that I can relate. Whereas if someone's telling me about something they've been through that I can't relate to, I can sit and I can listen, and perhaps that's helpful, but it's not the same as relating, as been saying, I know exactly what you mean. So even the most horrible hardships can give a person the tools to help innumerable other people suffer less through the same hardships. So it's hard to look back and say that anything was good or bad.
Yeah,
it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I definitely have changed my mindset about something that is good and something that is bad, definitely.
I do wish that I could relate to everybody, and to that end, me and Zhen have spoken endlessly about the nature of suffering and what's common to all people, trying to get to what it is that, if there is a kind of suffering that everybody shares. Because if everybody shares it, then the extent to which I come to terms with it or live in peace with it, I may be able to help everybody, if there is a common lot to everybody's suffering. But it's still an open question.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of suffering.
back on the topic of death, and another big thing that I've changed my thinking about or had to deal with was people dying young. And for example, the guy that passed away in the accident I was involved in, he was young. I think it was about 24, and often that can be seen as a very, very tragic experience for someone to die young. And I think I changed my thinking about it a bit, that like we have an idea that, you know, a full life is one that goes from 0 to 80, for example, or 90, and anything before that is like tragedy or bad. But I think partly I felt more like they had this beautiful bit of life, and then that's it. It's finished, and it was so sad that they've gone, because we share great times. But I was thankful for the time that they had in their life and that I got to share with, and perhaps the idea of having a long life means it's successful, and if it isn't, it's a tragedy. I don't know, I think maybe that's a bit simplified, or not. I'd like it to be looked at differently. Yeah. Well, I look at it a bit differently, I should say.
From the perspective of the person, you get some people are very old who will say that their life seems to have passed by so quickly. And I wonder, if we only have this one life with which to measure a lifetime from our own personal experience, there's no other. If you don't have a wallet full of lives that you've lived to compare it with, then it's like, how long is a piece of string, you know? Like I said, for me, I don't feel, I don't recall a beginning to my life. And so how long really has my life been from my point of view? You know? Has it been long? Has it been short? In order to decide on either of those things, I would need to compare it somehow. But I do think it's in human nature to feel a sense of preciousness about youth, which fades with as a person ages.
Mm-hmm.
We're less precious about older people dying than we are about, if we hear an old person's died in a car accident versus a baby, or a toddler or something. People tend to feel more has been lost, it's more of a tragedy than a young person has died. But from the perspective, if it's possible to step in the shoes of a toddler and have a look at that lifetime, it's been life the whole time, 100%. It's been life, and whether it's been 100 moments or 1,000,000 moments, each moment has been a full experience of life. And I'm not sure it's useful to add them up, to stack them up and say, well, I've had 10,000 moments, and that somehow means I've lived more, or had a fuller life. And then what about a person who's forgotten half of their life, or a person who doesn't really pay much attention to their life? They could live 100 years and only register a fraction of it as having been lived. And then another person might experience things. I've heard of these people called empaths, who just experience the sorrow of everybody else as though it's their own, and they just, they can't watch violent movies or anything because they can't help but just feel everything that's going on in the movie. And I can imagine that their life would seem quite long. 10 years as an empath might be so full of ups and downs that it would seem, just exhausting. Such a long experience.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, there have been times when I was a kid, going to someone's birthday party, and they've got a series of events lined up. So we're going to go to this place, and we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to go somewhere else and eat, and then we're going to finish up at this playground, and and it just seems like the day goes on for so long. But that's full of good things, not just nothing's going wrong.
Mm.
So my sense of a long day can be how full that day seems, how many events I seem to have registered, how many memories I have by the end of it. And then there are days that seem like every other, that seem to pass by, and next thing you know, it's Friday all over again, and where has the week gone? Does that mean that I haven't lived fully that whole week? Have I only been taking occasional stock of life as it's passing?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I wouldn't feel it especially tragic if I had died young. To be on my deathbed as a youth, I wouldn't feel that particularly tragic. I wouldn't feel like I've got so much more, how we do with others. There's so much more life to live, so much going for you. That's not how I would feel. But yet, as an outsider, I tend to feel such sadness as though they should feel this way, or that there really is some potential that's being lost. But do you feel, I wonder, if God has plans for you, that everybody's life is lived exactly according to plan? Do you feel this way? So if you hear of someone, like a child who's got leukemia or something, that it must somehow be to the greater good, or part of a plan that as a whole is good. Like if God were formulating that plan at some point, or if it's an ongoing process, that he's looking upon the entirety of his plans, and looking upon that entirety, he finds it to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than I'll try this with Andrew and see how it goes, or just I'll have Zhen win lotto next week and see how it plays out. But that he's got a where we might have a limited view and can't see the forest for the trees, and he sees the whole forest, where some things are dying young, right? Some trees just grow to saplings and die, and others grow to hundreds of years. That the whole of that is good.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas people measure their own story and find, or measure each other's stories and find them to be either lucky or unlucky, tragic or not, long or short. How do you feel about that?
I guess when you put it in the perspective of is having a long life the most important thing, or is it having a beautiful life, however long that is, then when you look at it in that perspective, it looks like, well, the bigger plans of God, that's not necessarily bad. It's bad for the parents who lose that lovely child that they have. That's shocking, and I certainly wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I don't know what that experience is like, and that would be shocking. But certainly from looking at it about whether having a short but lovely life is just as good as having a long life, I think that does change perspective. Another side of it, which it's very complicated, that idea of whether like why would God allow a small child to go through that suffering of leukemia. Again, from us talking about suffering and whether it's good or bad, perhaps there's lots of beautiful things that may have come out of that suffering, like a connection with the family that wouldn't have been had otherwise between the child and the parents, that would never in their whole lives would have experienced if they hadn't gone through that. And then another element which I've had talked about is the general idea that from the Adam and Eve sinning there was a corruption to our DNA through sin, which over the generations has caused malformations in the body and sickness and disease and evil intentions and
Malice.
mental health and those sort of things, which pervades our world now. And so there unfortunately is things like leukemia, and which back when Adam was in the Garden of Eden, there would never have happened if that decision wasn't made to disobey God by choosing to eat that fruit. So that is not explicitly explained in the Bible, really. That is sort of extrapolation and trying to understand the concept, but yeah, they're probably looking at it from different angles, but some of my thoughts on that matter. Yeah. The fire's amazing, huh? To look at.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Into the trance.
How boring would it be if it was predictable? Like, you knew exactly which way the flame went and it was just going to be a pattern. I like what you said about how it's going to be always changing, always different.
Always finding out what the fire's doing. Never knowing.
A picture of endless possibility right there, yeah?
Oh. Just relaxed.
Do you think the pain of death of loved ones is also that idea of attachment? Because
How do
Zhen
you-
has talked to me about that a bit,
How
attachment.
do you love without being attached?
Can you explain it for me again?
How do you love without being attached? I don't know. I'm asking.
Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Well, it's a concept I've thought you've talked about, that idea that you can experience and appreciate something, but also be able to let it go. So you're not grasping it or keeping it to yourself, for yourself.
Not possessing it.
Not possessing it, yeah? Which is a very hard thing to do.
I think attachment comes when you start thinking that you have ownership or something. Yeah? That this thing belongs just to you, this person.
Or you're worried that they might leave.
Yeah.
That wishing them well might be actually wishing them out of your life. And if you don't want them to leave, then you might inadvertently try to keep them.
Mm. So in that sadness of the funeral, would part of it be your own personal struggle with being able to let go, or wanting possession and that pain of not getting to keep that possession? Which if you could love with all your heart but also be able to not possess, then you could experience life differently and death differently from the perspective of others passing.
Yeah, it's like your girlfriend one day goes, "You're a good man, but I'm happier with someone else." Would you feel happy for your girlfriend if she leaves right there and then?
That'd be a painful thing to do.
Yeah.
I would find that hard.
But then you know she will be happier with someone else.
Well, I guess that actually hasn't. I've never experienced that, so I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Attachment.
That happened to me in a dream, actually. In my dream, my girlfriend had gotten together with someone else, and I'd seen them together, and they didn't know that I'd seen them together, but I'd seen that she was happier, that she was really, truly fulfilled, and, and I remember it was a double-edged sword. At once I felt deep sadness, because for me to not let her go would be such a sadness for her life, to deny her this possibility in whatever way. And on the other hand, such gladness that she found someone that fulfilled her to this extent, as though a third person looking in. It's really great for her. But as the subject that loses, that has to suffer a loss, it's very sad. So I don't think it'd be one thing or the other for me. I think I would be
both.
Yeah, all over the place.
Probably be both for me too.
Well, I guess it's not like, it's probably simplifying it by just calling it just an attachment thing, because what about that idea that maybe we should fight for things that we care about and we love, and the idea that you might be happy with that other person, that might not be necessarily what plays out, or
get into trouble when they use words like happy
like
for the best.
I mean, how do people know the grass is always greener on the other side, and you don't, you can't have certainty of that. So you probably do have. There is an element of maybe fighting for it first if you really believe it in your heart that it's right. And maybe the best way to do that is to try and separate that, whether it's an attachment selfish issue, or whether it
truly wanting the best.
Yeah. Look at truly wanting the best first, then look at whether you need to also fight for it.
Yeah, interesting.
Milo, sir?
It's 9:16.
Alright.
Because I've got an hour to get home, I probably can't stay for too much longer.
Alright, no worries. An hour to get home. Shit.
Yeah,
That far?
I looked it up. 56 minutes or something.
Oh crap, really?
Because I literally am by the ocean,
Wow. Where are you staying?
Trig Beach.
Oh, Trig Beach, okay. Alright.
So yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
I could continue this all night, I reckon.
He's up in Kingsley.
Oh, true.
Mm. Yeah. Campfire. Alright, plastic, don't breathe.
Oh wow, that was cool. That properly lit up.
Different colours, doesn't it?
Did you hear what I was saying?
You got to head off soon?
Yeah, I can't have too late at night, and I've got about an hour's drive.
So you're gonna wake up early tomorrow, huh?
Yeah,
What time do you have to work for?
Sometimes these.
8 o'clock. Oh, these are good.
Yeah, pretty good. They're only like $2 or something from Woolies. Totally bad for you. But,
Okay, so no Milo. What about Tim Tams?
Okay, yeah, so I'll have a day off from... I'm trying... When we talked about health and diet, over the last 4 years as part of my rehab, I really took my diet very seriously. Trying to give me the best chances of rehabilitation and brain function. And so, I've reduced a lot of sugar. I like
pretty
things
safe
like
bet reducing sugar.
yeah, and I did, rather than do a diet, I've just done slow lifestyle changes over the years. I've become addicted to sparkling mineral water,
Oh yeah?
and I that's my beverage of choice now. So rather than having soft drink or anything else, I love it, sparkling mineral water, and that took out a lot of sugar. And I was trying to buy things as much as I can just on the outside of the not in the aisles. Have you
Yeah.
ever looked at that idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try and do that. Eat less processed stuff with less sugar. Usually try and look at things with less than 7 grams of sugar per 100.
Yep.
And cut down on carbs a bit. Less pasta, less bread.
What about going for like brown rice over white? and
Yep, I did that
wholemeal?
change. I always have brown rice now.
Oh, yeah?
Sometimes bung in a bit of quinoa
Yeah.
with the brown rice,
Oh, good to know.
and a bit less red meat. Trying to have more chicken and more fish, although fish I don't end up ever doing. I try and have salmon, but yeah.
Well, apparently, if you're gonna go for salmon, you gotta steer clear of the farmed ones.
Oh, really?
Apparently, yeah, and that is the cheaper one. So to get wild caught is more expensive. That's why I haven't ventured there yet. But apparently, the omega oils are out of balance with the fish ones, and you get too much omega-6, and you'll feel horrible. Like you'll just feel awful every day. And whereas wild caught apparently has far lower omega-6 and omega-3, so I think you can have plenty of them. It's good for you.
Oh, I better have a look at that then. Yeah. And I am having quite a lot of tinned sardines with oil,
Yeah.
or sardines in oil, and tinned tuna, and smoked mussels and smoked oysters in tins.
Yeah, okay.
Just
The
trying
only
to.
thing I've been cautioned against is if you're going to go for the tinned fish,
Yeah.
is to get the ones packed in spring water
Mhm.
and then add your own oils, because they'll go for the cheapest oil, whatever's on the market that's cheapest, is usually soybean oil, which is not necessarily the greatest for us. And so the only reason I'm hearing about that is because on keto it's all about oils.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're going to get your fuel from what's in the can or add it yourself.
Yep.
And so if you're used to getting tuna in olive oil, then get it in spring water, and then add some olive oil where you know the source of it. You know.
Okay. Yeah. That's an easy fix. I could do that. Yeah.
But yeah, apparently sardines are really healthy.
Are they?
Yeah, apparently.
Well, we're just trying to get more fish in my diet. Then that's just an easy option. I'll often just like as a snack, I'll just sit and maybe get some wholemeal crackers or just eat it with a teaspoon. Just eat it out of the tin. And I'm always on a quest to eat more veggies. That's a bit, up and down. I was actually planning on having multiple meals per week of vegan,
Oh yeah.
but I haven't kept up with that.
Yeah. One trick is do you like sweet potato?
Yeah, love it.
My girlfriend's dad does this. He'll get a big sweet potato, and he just take a slice of it. So I don't know, maybe a couple of centimeters thick, however big the potato is, but just the right thickness, and just throw it in the microwave, right? With just a plastic lid over the top, or just to trap the moisture in. It's got enough moisture in there to steam and cook thoroughly. It's like a couple of minutes, and you've got some sweet potato, rather than having to throw the oven on and prepare it roasted or something like that.
Yeah, which takes.
You can make a snack, and it's like sweet potato it's almost a whole food. You know, people have survived on nothing but sweet potato before.
Mm-hmm.
It's got heaps in there and plenty of carbs, so you got all your energy and nutrients as well. And there's 4 or 5 varieties of sweet potato that you can find.
Should have brought some today.
You're not trying to rub it in, are you?
I can't eat it anyway. It's too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I would have had a taste though. You bastard.
Next campfire, I'll bring some.
That
Normally
is the
we just
best
chuck
way
it
to
in
eat it.
straight
Though.
away. Just chuck it into the fire
Yeah.
without even wrapping it up.
Really?
Yeah.
So
it's
you
like-
lose the outside,
Yeah.
you know,
You guys are wild.
charcoal, but the inside is nothing like it.
When it turns black, you crack it open.
Yeah.
Oh.
That smoky flavor.
Yeah. People stop talking. They do. I've seen it happen like 3 or 4
Oh,
times.
dude, we're gonna have to do this again so I can try that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright,
You need to get yourself organised, Zen.
let's do that for sure.
All right. I'll make it up to you next time. I'll bring a purple one, a yellow one.
Well, they're all gonna be black in the end, aren't they?
Oh, but the purple
No,
one,
the
man.
purple one. Purple skin, white flesh, right? Otherwise, it's not the most exciting sweet potato. But in the fire, something happens to the sugars in there,
Really?
and it's
Magic in the fire.
It's like candy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta try this.
People just, people can't handle it. The orange one's good too, but you can get
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
you can get pretty much the same result from an oven.
Yeah.
Yeah, that white one.
Yeah, man.
All right, next time for sure. I will wish for this and put it out there, and then send Zen a message.
How did you find your trip to Nepal and around?
Well, I was largely just going with the flow, because I'm not a traveller. I didn't have aspirations,
Yeah.
so I let Zen and the others do most of the planning and just went with the flow. So it was kind of like a roller coaster ride for me. And I got sick at one point,
On the hike.
and the hike was the hardest thing I've ever done. And but
Yeah. Yeah,
No
actually, I
regrets,
was surprised. It sounded a lot harder than I thought it would be.
I'm sure
Oh,
other
what you
people do it,
described.
like have an easier time.
Mhm.
But I think each of us struggled in our own way with it.
Yep.
And but yeah, it is it's a fond memory, even though it was some of the most
Suffering.
full of suffering.
Yeah.
Couldn't have got it any other way, and I'm richer for it, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, if you can manage to get out the other side, I reckon those difficult experiences are awesome.
yeah, it makes it tougher when the locals believe that if you can't finish it, it means you have bad karma. Everything's about karma. Yeah, our guide, if the weather was good karma, good karma.
Yeah.
Very good. No wind. No snow. Good karma. Good karma.
But one thing I'll never forget, and I haven't seen anywhere else, is the people there. The people there, every single person seemed to be engaged in some kind of religious practice, like at every moment. Either mumbling prayers to themselves, you know, or actually physically using those prayer beads. You know, they have a necklace of beads and they just keep them moving.
Yeah.
And each time you're supposed to be making a prayer.
Yeah.
And
Or doing the, what do you call it again?
prostration.
Yeah, prostration. Yeah.
And
You know what prostration is?
Getting down on your face.
Yeah. Just everywhere. You're walking on the street and someone next to you starts doing it. Yeah.
and
Wow.
but like par for the course, this is just normal. You're like breathing.
Yeah.
And so there's there's a devotion, I would say. There's devotion. And when we went to the temples, we just saw endless streams of people. And granted, it's the season for it,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure it's that busy all year round, but endless procession of people who you might think were just kind of like doing the rounds, you know? It would be embarrassing not to, so they're just going through the motions, but actually engaged, actually like touching things that, and offering money and things, and all not for show. You know, they didn't care that I was watching them. They'd catch my eyes afterwards, but be too busy, you know, to think, what does that guy think of what I'm doing? They're too busy in a private engagement with whatever the relic is or something.
Yeah.
Something I just never expect to see in the West. It's just really, devotion is something that I feel kind of lucky to even have a sense of the meaning of the word, given the culture I've grown up in, and in a non-religious family. So,
Yeah.
and I also think that it's inevitable that culture will be dying, in the sense that you've got people from China moving in who do not share the religious views,
Yeah.
and who will just gradually displace, you know, eventually the local Tibetans who are devoted, even if they stay the same number of them, they'll just be outnumbered by people who aren't religious, who will leave litter in the street and don't care how noisy they are. And so I feel like I've seen something that I may never see again. If I went back there in 5 years.
That's true.
So that was one part that made you feel like you're glad that you went, hey?
Yeah.
That you got to see that before it disappears to an extent.
Yeah. And to know that it's possible for entire groups of humans to live in a kind of a harmony. And everybody seemed peaceful. I didn't see anybody who seemed pissed off with what was happening.
Yeah, wow.
Everybody just seemed to be going about things either neutral or content.
Like visibly content.
Yeah, they'd either
Like
have a
joy in
slight
them.
smile or be neutral. But no one seemed to be grimacing and, like feeling
Downcast.
no
sort
sense
thing.
of entitlement, like I shouldn't have to deal with this weather. you know.
Yeah.
And it's quite a...
Well, I'll walk you to your car, mate.
Thanks for
Cheers.
the grub, man.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad that we got to share it.
That was good. Time I've seen it. Did it pretty good.
What do you call this thing again?
Great.
A braai grate. So the
Braai.
braai is the name of the South African, what they...
How do you spell?
Braai is South African barbecue. B-R-A-I-I, I think.
Okay.
Braai. And, yeah, so that's a braai grate. I think that's what